Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Remember, most gracious Virgin Mary, that never was it known that anyone who fled to thy protection, implored thy help, or sought thy intercession, was left unaided. Inspired by this confidence, I fly to thee, O Virgin of Virgins, my Mother. To thee I come, before thee I stand, sinful and sorrowful. O Mother of the Word incarnate, despise not my petitions, but in thy mercy hear and answer me. Amen. Thank you for coming. It's otherwise a beautiful night. I don't know why you're here, but thank you. The title of this talk is Speaking with Clarity and Compassion about the abortion issue. Ever since the Dobbs decision, that is to say, life after Roe. Now, I think pro-lifers have always done a pretty good job speaking with clarity and compassion. Sometimes our passions get the better of us, knowing what exactly is happening in abortion, and that's to be expected. I don't blame anyone for that, but I think for the most part, the pro-life community, both Catholic and otherwise, has done a very good job. Compassion, however, does not mean compromise. So we're not supposed to speak now with some, and believe me, there have been a couple of things that I saw written in the Catholic press that said, this is no time for rejoicing. There's a lot of work to do. There's a lot of, people out there that need help, and that I'm saying to myself, who are these people that are saying stupid things like that? It's like at the end of World War II, with armistice, saying, this is no time for rejoicing. There's a lot of rebuilding to do of Europe. Well, yes, there is, but it's also a time of rejoicing. Because the war is over, things have turned for the better. This is definitely a time to rejoice. Things are not perfect. We didn't labor in the pro-life movement just for Dobbs, because Dobbs does very little, as I'll get into that, okay? The Supreme Court decision does not make abortion illegal. What it does is it unseats Roe versus Wade, which made it illegal to make abortion illegal. So we're getting warmer, we're on the right path. But people in the pro-life movement did not labor just so that we can kick this thing back to states and let states legalize abortion and just say, well, okay, as long as it's democratic. No. We want all human life, born and unborn, accepted in life and protected in law. Ideally, there should be some sort of constitutional amendment protecting human life, putting it outside the reach. Here's one issue on which the diehard pro-aborts and the diehard pro-lifers are in agreement. This should not be up for grabs. This should be beyond the reach of any kind of majority. We think the right to life of the unborn should be utterly untouchable. They think the right to abortion should be untouchable. But at least with those sort of polar opposites, you have some kind of clarity. It's with a lot of the muddle in the middle that you get sometimes very confused people. And I'm hoping, I know this is a Catholic, parish sort of address. I hope, like-minded people and everything. What I hope to do in this talk is maybe help you talk about these issues better with others. Maybe people in your family, people at your work that are confused about this, don't know how to talk about this, maybe are upset, see it as dangerous, like the Catholic Church having too much influence in the world, and this could be dangerous for us, there could be a backlash, etc. How do we talk with people who think that way and say those kind of things? By the way, can you in the back hear me? You can hear me? Barely?
Father, I think it would help if we use the other microphone.
Okay, all right.
To put that on the spot.
So, I'm going to add another stupid microphone. I don't think this is ideal use of space, by the way. They should have been something a little more triangular, but anyway.
I've had people come in or up here.
Okay. And, okay, compassion doesn't mean compromise. It certainly doesn't mean like somehow flattering the other side or, trying to, I don't know, tell them that they're.
Can we turn the microphone?
I guess that was the purpose of, can you
There
hear
we
me
go.
better now? We need to be very clear when we're talking to other people about this stuff, whether they're on the polar opposite side of the issue or whether they're somewhere in between there and where we are. But we also need to recognize that there really is, I don't like to use the term pro-choice because I think it gives too much. It's a nonsense term when you think about it. It's utterly nonsensical, but it was brilliant on their part to seize this kind of ambiguity and say, well, we're just for choice. We just want women to have choices. Of course they don't. Look at what they're doing to crisis pregnancy centers now. They're bombing them. If we can't kill babies, but first of all, and they still can. That's the thing. And they are. We're not gonna let you guys help women in need. So they're bombing, they're defacing and, setting fire to Catholic churches, crisis pregnancy centers. By the way, I'm kind of proud that they know that the Catholic Church is their enemy. Bernard Nathanson, before he became a great pillar of the pro-life movement, was an abortionist, and he reckons that he committed probably 60,000 abortions in his career, one of them his own child. He said very early on that the whole movement recognized that the Catholic Church was enemy number one. The Catholic Church needed to be, first of all, discredited and infiltrated. I think they've done a damn good job. But for all that, the Catholic Church is still recognized as enemy number one. For all of the unfaithfulness of many Catholics, both among the clergy and among the laity, in Congress, even in the White House, for all of that, the Catholic Church still seems to be this sort of, recognized enemy of what some people think of as progress, which we call the culture of death. So I thought that was very instructive. But this is something that we cannot stop saying. Okay? I just said there is a group in there somehow who I think we should probably call pro-choice. Okay? They're not like the radical pro-abortionists who think that all abortions should be permissible up to the moment of birth, all that kind of stuff. They're just kind of scared and squishy, and they just don't want to have to take a position. Okay? These are the people we should be concerned about. These are the people we should be trying to communicate with. The pro-abortionists you cannot talk to. Their minds in many cases have simply been corrupted, especially with the activists. I mean, these people who have dedicated themselves to this, talk to or listen to talks by Abby Johnson, who worked for Planned Parenthood for many years, I think 15 years, 17 years, I forget how many years. She actually was the manager of a Planned Parenthood abortuary in Texas. Listen to, Bernard Nathanson. There was a Catholic philosopher named Elizabeth Anscombe. Anyone ever heard of her? She was a British woman. She was probably one of the most important English language philosophers of the 20th century. She was a student and executor for the estate of Wittgenstein, very famous philosopher. Everyone's heard of Wittgenstein, at least in academia. But Anscombe became a Catholic along with her husband at a very early age, and she gave a talk at Georgetown University back in the 80s. And she said something that just made everyone in the room just go, oh. Someone asked her a question. Her talk was all about, the evil of abortion and everything, and someone said something like, I forget what the question was, but it was something along the lines of, but, abortion proponents would say this. And she said, well, her answer was, well, you can't believe anything they say. All they do is lie. You know that, don't you? Like, 95% of the people in the room were pro-abortion. The woman had no fear. She was wonderful. She and her husband toasted Humanae Vitae with champagne the night that it came out. And they were both on the faculty of Cambridge University in England, so that tells you how far apart from their sort of their peers they were in many ways. She said, you can't believe a word they say. If they're willing to kill children, they're willing to lie about anything. They lie, they just lie. And there's a lot of lies or misinformation, as we say now, or I'm not sure, but misinformation, whatever, all around. Some of it's been going on for years, ever since abortion became kind of a political issue, but some of these are more new, so we're going to talk about some of those. But as for those people, the squishy people in the middle, I think we need to have some kind of patience for them, especially when they're Catholics, because there are, not so much in this diocese, which has some pretty sound parishes and good clergy and good schools, etc., but in a lot of places in the world, a lot of places mostly in this country, a lot of Catholics have never heard a single word from their priests about the evil of abortion, much less contraception or, IVF technology or anything like that. Never a word. If they have, it was sometimes on the side of the opposition. So we have to be aware that a lot of our Catholic brothers and sisters today are very, very badly formed and are in deep, deep darkness and confusion, and we can't expect them just to believe something that we say just because we say it. We have to be able to give them something, give them the tools to think through things themselves, maybe to go to sources themselves, do their own reading, their own study, but ultimately hold the line and at least know that, what they think is not the only Catholic position that's out there, to say the least. So, first I want to talk about what Roe and Dobbs each basically did and said, and then get clear on the realities today in this country. And then I want to talk about some of those lies that I mentioned that are prevalent. And then I want to talk about some of those Catholic concerns that some people have, like not wanting to, get the church too invested, or force Catholic views on others, as it's sometimes said. Okay, and I hope we have a little bit of time for Q&A. But I want everyone to be out of here by 8:30 at the latest. Don't hesitate to leave if you need to before then, but I don't want this to go more than an hour and a half, or as it is now, an hour and 20 minutes from now. Okay, so first of all, a lot of people are talking about, the recent Supreme Court decision as if that was Roe. People are saying, I'm so upset about Roe. And I'm like, yeah, I was too, but I really love Dobbs. Huh? What? Okay, so Roe versus Wade was a 1973 decision, January 22nd, the date of the March for Life. That's why we do the March for Life on January 22nd. That's the anniversary of when the Supreme Court released that decision. Roe versus Wade, and there was a companion case called Doe versus Bolton, which came from Georgia. Roe versus Wade was a text that challenged the Texas law that prohibited abortion. I forget what the time frame was, how many weeks into pregnancy or something, but came before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court decided 7-2 that the law was wrong, and by virtue of this decision, all laws in the United States that prohibited abortion were effectively declared unconstitutional. For all of America's history, abortion had been illegal, either criminalized or at least unlawful. All of a sudden, with one stroke, down they went. All white men, by the way, or maybe not. Thurgood Marshall might have been on the court at that point. I can't remember. Was he? Okay. In any event, all men. So, so much for men not having any say in this. But I think the only two that voted against it were William Rehnquist. Ultimately, he later became Chief Justice, and Byron White. And Byron White called it at the time a raw exercise of judicial power, which he meant to be taken very sharply, because in the Federalist Papers, James Madison says that the one branch of government that is not supposed to exercise any will or power is the Supreme Court, or the courts generally. The executive branch, the legislative branches exercise political will. The court exercises reason only, which means that its job is to interpret law. Decide, in fact, we're so used to judicial review now, we're so used to this idea that the Supreme Court is just there to sort of vet legislation to see if it squares with the Constitution. That itself is quite controversial. It's only Marbury versus Madison that gives us a Supreme Court that can sit in judgment on legislation. Before then, and Robert Bork said very clearly when he was being nominated to the Supreme Court, he said, there should be no judicial review. Supreme Court should not review legislation. It's the Congress's bit. If Congress makes a mistake in passing a law, it's up to Congress to correct it, not the court. So you might say, well, what's the court for? The court is there for dealing with other kind of cases. Maybe a case where the law might be ambiguous. How does this particular case fit in with maybe two laws that, you know, they call them interstitial cases sometimes. They fall between laws, and human laws can't provide for every possible, anyway. It's getting off on a tangent there, but that's what the court did in Roe. It took this Texas law, it was challenged. The woman in the case, her name was Norma McCorvey, she went by the pseudonym Jane Roe. At the time of the case, she was not even pregnant anymore. One of those lies that the pro-abortion movement uses to advance their causes. She later bitterly regretted her. I met this woman in Texas. I went to the University of Dallas, and she lived in Dallas, and she eventually was converted by a Dominican priest. She first converted to, stop it. She first converted to some sort of fundamentalism. There was a famous Reverend Flip Benham, who I also knew in Dallas. He converted her, first of all, to Christianity, and then she was a practicing lesbian. No one could give her any answer as to why homosexuality was wrong until this Dominican came along and helped her understand it. She came the rest of the way into the fullness of the faith, died a Catholic. Repudiating her role in Roe versus Wade, she became a pro-lifer herself. The woman who, it wasn't so much she that brought the case, but her lawyers who kind of, you know, used her to advance the cause. The other woman, Doe from Georgia, she became pro-life much earlier, but she also, what does that say about the pro-abortion movement? Both these sort of heroes, so to speak, wound up repudiating and becoming very upset that they were so badly used by the pro-abortion movement. So that's what Roe did, effectively. It took the issue from states, from the legislatures, and said, you cannot have laws against this because it violates privacy. There is a right to privacy, they said, that is not explicit in the Constitution, but it's in the penumbra, meaning in the shadows. If you read between the lines closely enough, you'll find this. So they base this decision on a prior right to privacy that is not even in the Constitution. You don't even need to be pro-life to have a problem with Roe versus Wade as a Supreme Court decision. In fact, many pro-abortion activists were sort of calling for years to have it shored up by a better decision, because this is a very shaky kind of, you know, foundation. You've got this on a very important decision, and it's on a very shaky decision, or a very shaky foundation. So, eventually, Dobbs comes along. As you know, there have been many challenges to Roe versus Wade indirectly through states trying to outlaw abortion up to so many weeks and so on. Heartbeat laws, laws against partial birth abortion. You know, or even just if a baby happens to survive an abortion, you cannot kill it. Even that failed the U.S. Congress and Senate some years back. It was called the Born Alive Act. This is something that Hadley Arcus really pushed for. I don't know if you know who Hadley Arcus is. A convert from Judaism, legal scholar, jurisprudence scholar, and he's written more eloquently probably than anyone else on the pro-life issue, since long before he was a Catholic, actually. But he said basically, he encouraged, you know, pro-lifers in the Congress and the Senate to push for this legislation, if only to prove, to expose what is at stake here. What is at stake is not just a woman's bodily autonomy. He said ultimately, it is a right to a dead baby. That's what it means. You have a right to a dead baby with this law of abortion. Doesn't matter that someone might be there saying, please let me adopt it, I'll take the baby, I'll take it right now, doesn't matter. Because according to a very strange and dark way of thinking, and a kind of, this ultimately, I think, it ultimately goes back to Satan, but there was a legal scholar named, he taught at Harvard, but he was named John Rawls. He published a big fat work called A Theory of Justice. He basically says that people have the right to define their world for themselves. That's kind of a thumbnail sketch, but he says all of us have the right to be what we want to be, and not only that, we have the right to the esteem of others. Where does ring any bells? Like, you misgendered me. You dead named me. I have a right to, I am a woman. I'm not, but you know. Well, see, the whole transgender issue is a perfect example of this, because it is not just about what people want. I think most people here would just say, you know, if you want to think you're a woman, I'm not going to interfere with you. It's when this gets thrown into law, all of a sudden you're required by law to use female pronouns for a male person. You are required to respect what this person, you're expected to acknowledge. I mean, this is not just speech control, this is mind control. George Orwell could never have foreseen something this bizarre and this evil. I mean, 1984 was prophetic, but it didn't go far enough. But you know, and then in the 1992 case, Casey versus Pennsylvania, this is when great Catholic Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy really showed what he was made of when he said that basically, at the heart of our Western liberal project is the right to, once again, the right to define your life, your reality, you know, to define your own sense of meaning, the meaning of the universe. Scalia mocked this terribly by saying, he called it the sweet meaning of life clause, which again, nowhere to be found in the Constitution. But see, this is the way that a lot of leftist, liberal, legal scholars think today. No more is our world, our government, our society somehow predicated on a search for the common good, the good of society. It is for some sort of unleashing of, you know, the most radical kind of individualism that at the same time implicates other people. You have a right to their esteem, according to this view. So, okay, so much for Roe. Dobbs comes along now after many years of challenges, and you know, it's like all the stars aligned, not just on the court with 6 very, well, I would say we have 2 very good justices. We have 2 mediocre justices and then a couple that actually came through, but and also the stars aligned also in a very different way, in that it was the Feast of the Sacred Heart of Jesus and also the Feast of the Birth of St. John the Baptist. Okay, so I don't think there was any accident to it, and I think there's going to be some enduring value to this Supreme Court decision just because of that. I can't prove it, but I do believe it. Dobbs effectively said that Roe was built on sand, and there is, you know, this should have been repealed a very long time ago, never should have been passed. This is, I mean, without even passing any kind of value judgment on abortion itself, it's just saying, as a legal decision, this is a hot mess. There's nothing to recommend it. And Alito very wisely cites all kinds of liberal scholars. If you want to, read something very good, and it's not a hard thing to read. Everything together is like 213 pages. That's with like appendices and all the dissenting opinions too. But if you just read Alito's decision, it's 63 pages long. It's not that difficult. It's not that scholarly. You can skip the footnotes. Just try to read his text. It's very clear. I think he was writing it. I think he knew he was writing this for the ages. It's a very clearly written text. He has a very good style, not quite as good as Scalia, but then Scalia would have probably done a little bit too much high flying and soaring and everything. He needed someone a little more sober like Alito writing this. But it was a beautifully written decision, very good, very sound, basically just saying the court has no authority here. These state laws that were smacked down at the time of Roe were perfectly consistent with the Constitution. They should never have been knocked down. This law now, it was in the state of Mississippi. This law is perfectly consistent with the United States Constitution. We have no, there's nothing that says it shouldn't stand. It's, so bless this decision. And by the way, we're repealing Roe and Casey too. They said Casey too because Casey kind of put a little, it went further. It went further than Roe. Gave a little extra, ammunition. It was still unconstitutional ammunition, but it tried to provide a little more kind of a grounding for the right to abortion and the right to, pursue your own life dreams, sort of thing. And basically said these things are nowhere in the Constitution. All we can do as a court is interpret the Constitution. We're dependent on the text of the Constitution. Now, there are some people who said that they should have gone much further and they said they could have used this opportunity to put abortion beyond reach. They could have made, with a stroke of the pen, they could have made abortion totally unconstitutional. I'm not sure if that's true. And I'm not sure how long that would have stayed. Whether or not abortion is itself mentioned in the Constitution, they said the idea of the human person, if you go back through the history of, Anglo-American law and everything, there's very clearly embedded in the laws, both of England and the United States, a clear recognition that unborn human beings had and deserved protection and law. Ultimately, I think this is probably the best they could have done. They probably could not have gotten Kavanaugh, definitely could not have gotten Roberts on board for that. Probably couldn't have gotten Kavanaugh. I'm not even sure about Coney Barrett. Thomas and Alito, definitely. Everyone else on there, a little squishy. Even Gorsuch. I think Gorsuch is closest to them on many things, but I don't think it would have been possible just, consensus-wise on the court. But I think it would be much more secure to do that by virtue of some kind of a constitutional amendment, which perhaps one day will be possible. Who knows? I honestly never thought I would see the day. I would live to see the day when Roe versus Wade was overturned. I was pretty sure it would happen someday. I really never thought it would happen in my lifetime. I remember going to Marches for Life back through the 80s and through the days I was in college and everything, and it just seemed like such a futile day, You go, it's kind of fun, you see people you like, but you go home again, you're thinking, we're stuck with abortion. It's never gonna change. Well, we're still stuck with abortion, in as much as what this decision, all it does is say that states may do as they like. States may outlaw abortion, states may permit abortion. The Constitution itself is silent on the matter. That's not perfect, but it is a step in the right direction. It's better than saying no state may outlaw abortion. At least some lives will be saved, even if it's still kind of a fragile situation that we're in, and many unborn children will still die. In New York and California in particular, there's no protection. Up until the moment of birth, it is legal. And in fact, I think in New York, isn't infanticide still legal? I mean, can I come, we could do questions later?
I mean, there's a question, just a comment.
Okay, sure.
As I was driving here listening to ACLJ,
Uh-huh.
is they have states now, I think it was California, they now wanna have pan-natal, abortions up to 1 year old,
Mm.
is what they tried to get into law. They got it rejected.
That's not even abortion.
Yeah.
That's clearly, okay, so, now, where does it leave the pro-life movement? Well, still with a lot of work to do. And yet, I disagree with those people. They're usually the kind of, social justice Catholics like Father James Martin, S.J., need I add, who, are out causing all kinds of confusion and division in the church. Okay? If a baby seal had been saved, he'd be dancing a jig. But no, baby human beings. Now, it wasn't him who said this, but this is the kind of thing that he would say and has said in the past. We can't be so triumphalistic about this. We can't be so happy about this. There's still very dark times, and there's still a lot of women out there who need help, and pro-life people aren't helping them as much as they should because they just care about people and through pregnancy. It just make me so angry every time I hear this kind of lie. That's one of the big lies. No one other than pro-life people is helping women in problem pregnancies or after the birth of their babies. No one is supplying them with diapers and formula and money and housing and job assistance except people in the pro-life movement. Planned Parenthood doesn't do that. Planned Parenthood does nothing except abortion and contraception. Remember that lie we were told where we've been told it all along? Planned Parenthood doesn't just do abortions. That's only 3% of what Planned Parenthood does. Really? Well, then why are all these Planned Parenthoods closing down all over these, red states that now have trigger laws? What about all the other? I thought it was just 3% of what they did. Why aren't you still, doing free mammograms and all that kind of stuff? Nope, nothing. So there's still a lot of work to do in the pro-life movement. I think we should say just as much work, but we have a freer hand to do it now with the Supreme Court decision saying that states may make abortion illegal. Now, let's talk about some of the lies that are so prevalent, okay? First of all, do you mean you're gonna force a woman who was raped or made pregnant through incest to have this baby? You're gonna have a forced pregnancy? See, forced pregnancy, there it is. This is obviously a very difficult kind of case to deal with. They're rare, but they do happen, so it's a valid point to raise. However, if you turn this on them, and this is something Catherine Glenn Foster did recently. Anyone know who she is? Catherine Glenn Foster is this wonderful pro-life woman. She works, I think, for Americans United for Life. She was answering questions before Congress, Congressman Jamie Raskin, or maybe Senator, I forgot whether, is he a senator or a congressman? Congressman, okay. He's berating her, for all this, forced pregnancy kind of stuff, and she's just looking at him, just, dead eyes, like, you idiot. He finishes speaking and she smiles at him and she said, Congressman, if there were an exception for rape and incest, would you sign this bill? And he just looks all flushed. He goes, reclaiming my time. Just move on. Okay. First of all, hard cases make bad law. They always have. You do not base law on what happens rarely, or on the, rare or heartbreaking sort of case. That's a bad precedent. That's bad law. That's not what is normal. Secondly, I don't know, this is not going to satisfy any pro-abortion person, but many women who have carried to term a pregnancy that was caused by a rape or by incest were glad that they were dissuaded from abortion. And many women who had abortions after rape, even if it made them feel sort of clean from the disgrace and the violation that happened to them, they wound up very often having the same regrets that other post-abortive women had, even though this child was conceived in an act of violence or, treachery in the case of incest. If we're going to apply the death penalty to someone, shouldn't it be the rapist? Shouldn't it be the rapist? Now, I know there's some Catholics who are very anti-death penalty. That's your right. It's not an obligation. But if we're going to apply the death penalty to anyone, should it not be the rapist rather than the innocent child? How the child came to be that's an act of violence, it's a terrible thing, but the child remains as innocent as any other conceived child in the womb. This is a hard thing to deal with, but I think the pro-life argument stands or falls with something like this. If you give in here, what you're basically saying is it's okay to kill an innocent child if it came about through no fault of its own, but in a way that was offensive to the mother. We can't say that. What we can do is help the woman in a situation like that, give her all the kind of counseling she needs, give her all the kind of help she needs. You cannot, we as a pro-life, if we're against abortion for the right reason, namely that it puts to death an innocent child, then you can no more give in here than you can in any other case. So, but I say this is a lie, not so much that babies are never conceived by rape and incest, they certainly are, but it's that they don't care. They're not willing to make any concession. They're not saying, oh yes, we'll be perfectly happy to outlaw every other abortion except for these, or you say in the case of the life of the mother's threat or something like that. No, they're not. They're not willing to do that. So why would they even bring it up? It's to throw sand in your face in the course of, a discussion when you're trying to get down to principles. There's many reasons to be against abortion. Many good reasons. The mother is wounded. Let's not forget the abortionist brings himself closer to hell. But let's never stop remembering that. The abortionist is the one who's hurt more than anyone else in an abortion. More than anyone else. An innocent baby who's killed in the womb goes straight to God. Mother, granted, okay, that's bad, but in many cases, let's say the mother is beside herself with grief or fear and she does something stupid, okay. But a doctor who with cold blood can do this, highly culpable, perfectly in control of what he's doing, knows full well what this is. You don't even need to be a Christian to realize this. Socrates said it's better to suffer injustice than to commit injustice. Because when you commit an injustice, you become evil. Every time an abortionist puts a baby to death, he's becoming more demonic, more evil. So in a sense, we could say that, I shouldn't call the abortionist a victim of abortion, but he's certainly harmed by what he does. The baby dies, something of the mother dies, a little piece of her heart. She brings grief upon herself and tremendous regret. Not always. But I guess that just shows that women can be sociopaths just as much as men. But most women who have abortions, if they have a conscience, feel it, regret it, repudiate it later. And sometimes it just takes a certain kind of conversation for it all to come out. Or she may be sitting in a park and see kids playing and it may occur to her, this is how old my child would be today. But there's many reasons to be against abortion, but the most obvious reason should be this is the death of an innocent human being, a human person. Now let's get to another one of those lies. It's not so much a lie, but sort of once again say it in the face. How often do we hear that? Do you really believe that an embryo is a human person? Doesn't even look like a human person. Or a zygote something microscopic? Do you really believe? The answer to that is yes. An embryo does look just like a human being does at 2 weeks of age. That's what a human being is supposed to look like at that age. There was a wonderful meme I saw recently on social media where it said, it showed a little picture of a cell, little cells aggregating and growing, and it said, the caption said, "This is me," and then an embryo, still me. Then like a little further on in the pregnancy, it's still me, and then a toddler, then an adolescent, and then an old person. Me, 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 me. That's the journey of life for all of us. So to say, it's absolutely insane to say, you think an embryo looks like a human being? Yes. It doesn't look like an adult, but it looks like what a human being is exactly supposed to look like at that age. That's what we all look like. Here we have scientists, often, incapable of looking beyond and thinking beyond their own emotions and their own noses. It's like, isn't part of science the acknowledgement that we don't know everything? Doesn't science get off the ground by being open to perhaps new discoveries, something you haven't thought of before, maybe some kind of influence that you never anticipated before? Isn't that what science is about? Science is completely opposed to the whole idea that I've got a closed system. Nothing can come in on this. Of course, during COVID, we saw a lot of that kind of closed system science, but that's not good science. That's what you call ideology. Ideology means the primacy of the theoretical. Okay, we have this theory, and we're gonna stamp it like some kind of a template onto the world. Anything that doesn't fit isn't real. But you have all this other evidence. Shut up. Sweep it under the rug. There. What evidence? That's ideology. Ideology is where you put the theory and everything has to bend to the theory. Otherwise, to hell with, countervailing data. And if the pro-abortion movement is not ideological, nothing is. Nothing is. So, you really think that? And then they sometimes trick people by taking, maybe a picture of an alligator or some kind of reptile embryo, which looks sometimes indistinguishable from a human embryo, certain parts of. You're really saying that is a human person? And they sort of do this gotcha thing, okay? Well, yes, you're thinking it's a human. They know it's not, and they say, ha, it's not a human. That was, that was an alligator embryo. You said it was human, but okay, fine. That's just dumb. They look the same at a certain age. It's only after a certain point of development that you can tell, But the point, huh?
The DNA will tell the truth.
The DNA, right. But they're trying to say that, just because something looks like a fetus or is a fetus and doesn't look like us, can't stand and walk and talk and, ride a bike or something, it's not a human person. Well, no. Those are things not proper to human persons. Those are things proper to human persons of a certain age. Only those who have certain developed cortexes and, let's say, weren't starved at birth or something like that, someone who survived to a certain age, only then can people actually look and talk and ride bikes and that kind of thing. But it's a very, very bad and empty kind of argument. It gets a lot of people flat-footed. At some point it is. See, that's the question then. If it's not a person in the womb, when does it become one? With consciousness? No. What is a human? A human is anything that is the offspring of humans. It's that simple. Now you could do a DNA test and find out if something's human, like if something were somehow magically, removed from the womb and suspended or something, you don't know what it is. But, ordinarily, Alligators are born of alligators. Humans are born of humans. We're of the same stock, we're of the same human family. Something that comes from human parents is human. That's, there's more, it's not a definition of human, but that's how you can sort of, on a very practical level, find out who's human and who's not. What kind of parents do you have? What was your origin? Did you grow up in a human uterus, or, an elephant uterus, or? Okay. One of the big lies these days is that ectopic pregnancies cannot be treated. That laws against abortion would rule against treating ectopic pregnancies. False. Absolutely false. This has never been true and is not true now. Everyone know what an ectopic pregnancy is? Does anyone not know? An ectopic pregnancy, it comes from the Greek meaning out of place. So, whereas most pregnancies, the fertilized egg will implant in the inside of the uterus on the uterine wall and there receive its nourishment, sometimes the egg attaches somewhere in the fallopian tube, or sometimes somewhere outside in the abdomen of the mother or something. So any ectopic pregnancy is, for that very reason, doomed, because no fetus can survive outside the womb for long. The church itself has always recognized not only the permissibility, but the necessity of removing ectopic embryos, fetuses from the mother, and as soon as possible, because otherwise it becomes very, very dangerous. Women can have serious organ damage, there can be ruptures, bleeding, hemorrhaging, all kinds of stuff. So that is simply not true. Another very basic problem, one of the great lies going around, is this sort of blurring of distinctions with even the word abortion. Medically speaking, the term, what we call abortion normally, the medical term for that is feticide. That was always the term used back in medical books, back in the 50s, 60s, or whatever. Abortion means the expulsion from the womb of the baby. Embryo, fetus, whatever stage it is. It means the expulsion. That can sometimes happen in normal course, miscarriage. Miscarriages are called spontaneous abortions. That's not wrong. Miscarriages happen. Something goes wrong with the baby. There's something wrong. You know that because the baby somehow gets expelled. It's like something that just won't work. It can't mesh. So it's an act of God. Because if the baby were, brought to full term or something, there could be further damages. It's like nature's way of taking care of a problem. Okay? Spontaneous abortions are not what we mean by abortions that need to be outlawed. Miscarriages are not the result of sin. They're very sad when they happen, but it's not wrong. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about the removal of ectopic fetuses. We're talking about the intentional killing or the deliberate expulsion of the womb from a perfectly viable, healthy child for the sake of putting it to death. That's what's wrong. That's what we mean when we talk about, abortions being wrong and should be prohibited by law. So if you see a lot of this about, there was some Missouri law that caused some confusion because I read about this. I admit I was kind of confused myself when I was reading the article about it, but basically they took 3 different clauses and sort of blended them into one, and a lot of people thought, oh, this means ectopic pregnancies are, you can't operate, or, so that's not what was going on. In Missouri, what they were trying to do was say that doctors who were treating, because there's been a lot of treatment, a lot of doctors prescribing mifepristone, which I guess is like the morning after pill or something, or some kind of medical abortion rather than a surgical abortion. They were saying that doctors could not do this like on a Zoom call or something because you can't tell everything you need to know about it. You can't detect an ectopic pregnancy over a Zoom call. And one of these drugs could cause great harm to a woman if she was having an ectopic pregnancy. So basically, that's what it was outlawing. It was outlawing the kind of negligence that could happen, not treating the situation of an ectopic pregnancy. In any event, there's a lot more on that, but I'm not going to go into that anymore now. How about this one? This is sort of a general one. We've all heard it many times. This has been around since God knows when. Who are you to force your views on others? If you don't want an abortion, don't have one. We've all heard that so many times. I mean, Mamma Mia, but it's only with this one issue that seems to have any kind of traction with people. You transfer that argument to anything else and everyone immediately sees how empty it is. Try that with slavery.
Or vaccination.
Huh?
Or
Even COVID vaccinations, exactly. But you try talking, you don't want a slave, just have one. That doesn't really address the issue, does it? I'm not just saying that I have a problem with it. It's not like a matter of my taste. Like, I prefer Jif to Skippy. It's not a preference. It's a human rights outrage. You can't just say, okay, yeah, I guess that'll work. I just won't buy a slave. Meanwhile, people, human brothers and sisters, for no other reason than their color of their skin, are being maltreated, sometimes just executed by their masters because they were not pleasing, treated like animals. That won't work. Well, for the same reason, that won't work with abortion. But slaves are people, they're human. Well, we're saying that unborn children are human too. And much more vulnerable. And if it's just a matter of tallying deaths, this is far more deadly. This is far more obscene an offense against God than slavery was. Slavery had its own kind of, evil. There is something about the slavery of the Africans and, the Holocaust of the intentional Holocaust of the Jews, and that makes it particularly awful because you can see their faces. Is it worse to kill a born person than an unborn person? No, it's not worse. It's the same. It's just as bad. But you would think there'd be more of a disincentive. Seeing their face, if you lie to yourself enough, you can convince yourself, and many people have, that the unborn are not human. You can't really do that with other human beings that are they tried. Jews are subhuman, blacks are subhuman. Did they really believe that, or was it just something that they kept having to tell themselves even unto the last? I don't know. But the sort of don't impose your views on others is just so ridiculous. Let's ask, who's imposing whose views on whom? First of all, the whole idea that you can separate law from morality is ridiculous. You can't. The whole idea that you can't legislate morality. That's all law legislates. That's all it's about. It's all about morality. What else is law? It gives us a code for right behavior. And you could say, if you're a good modern, you could say, well, it's just to protect individual rights, so that, your right to swing your arm doesn't come in contact with my nose or something like that, good individualists. But even then, there's some concept of good and evil there. All legislation is about morality. Whose morality is more of an imposition? Those who say that unborn children should be subject to execution in the womb? Or those who said they deserve protection the same as anyone else? By the way, the same religions now that are saying that, abortion is wrong, kind of offense against God, are the same religions that say that the murder of born people is bad too. The armed robbery is bad. I don't hear anyone complaining about that. Those are found in the Ten Commandments too. Is that somehow a violation of church and state? Oh, we have laws against murder. Oh my gosh, you know what the fifth commandment is? Exodus? I just discovered this. It says thou shalt not kill. You can't have that. We have a distinction. We have a very clear distinction in our government between state and church. No. None of that. I guess we're going to have to repeal that law too. You never hear people saying that. If anything is being imposed, it's death on the unborn. Okay? Anybody hear of Michael Kinsley? he was I'm not sure if he's still alive, but I think he got Parkinson's or something, but he wrote for the New Republic for many years, was on Crossfire with Pat Buchanan, he's the liberal counterpart. He was a good pro-choicer, but he was sort of reluctantly so. He sort of went along because it's like everyone in his clan were. He said at one point, I think American liberalism took a wrong turn when it hitched its wagon to the pro-choice movement. He said that was a moment when we should have gone the other way. That was a human rights issue. We should have been on the pro-life side of the issue. He said this. Quite an insight. I've always thought the same thing. Why aren't liberals, anti-war, all this stuff, peace, against the death penalty, why aren't they anti-abortion? How are they on the opposite side of the issue? You can probably guess why. Because it's inextricably linked with the sexual revolution. Now, it's funny how abortion is sometimes mentioned as a sexual issue. It's where, the church, I've heard it said before, the church needs to stay out of the bedroom. Okay, well, abortions aren't done in bedrooms. Abortion is not a sexual act. But it is obviously related to sexual acts, and in particular to the sexual revolution. We have abortion now, and it's no accident that we got legalized abortion when we did. Okay, quickly on the heels of the sexual revolution. As a kind of backup contraception. This is something that Judge Kennedy said very clearly in the Casey decision. He said that we cannot remove abortion from the public economy. He said, too many people to this point, it was 1992, so that's 20 years after Roe. It's been another 30 since then, it's hard to believe, but too many people have organized their lives around the availability of abortion should contraception fail. I think that's almost verbatim what he writes at one point. Too many people have organized their lives around the availability of abortion should contraception fail.
Did you use the Constitution to defend that?
No. What do you think? Okay, so there's nothing outrageous being done by extending protection to unborn human beings as well as born human beings. It was always done. I mean, abortion is not new. Abortion was practiced in the ancient world before Christ, and certainly in the Greco-Roman world, abortion and infanticide were commonly practiced. But never, at least since in recent centuries, has any government countenanced abortion as it does now, almost everywhere in the world now, with the clear sort of, nod and permission from the United States of America. We were not the first, but we made it okay for everyone else. Now, this having been said about, this is not forcing our views on others or anything, but this is not even a Catholic issue. You don't need to be Catholic to see that this is wrong, that abortion is wrong. Any more than you need to be Catholic to see that murder is wrong. Or rape, or armed robbery, or lying. There is such a thing called natural justice or the natural law where we have a lot in common with other people who are non-believers. There's a lot of common ground. After all, we are of the same species. We're the same thing that they are. We just happen to be baptized and have inherited a certain kind of promise of eternal life that non-baptized persons have not yet, but we hope they do. But we're the same thing. We have the same nature. And no one that I know of has ever, no one in the pro-life movement, and no one in the Catholic Church that I know has ever said that the Catholic faith or things that are peculiar to Catholic religion or morality need to be forced on other people. For example, have you ever heard some Catholic congressman get up before Congress trying to push legislation for meatless Fridays? That's something Catholics do. We don't believe that other people are bound to observe meatless Fridays, even during Lent. That's something that we do based on our faith in Jesus Christ and in observance of his passion. That's not a matter of natural law. We don't look to do that for others. We don't expect non-Catholics to attend Mass on Sundays and holidays of obligation. We expect Catholics to, and we'd be happy if more Catholics did. See, that's the kind of thing that are for Catholics to do. There is no kind of creeping theocracy involved in Catholics. I mean, this has nothing to do with the Catholic faith per se. I'm glad that, in a way, it's kind of flattering to think that everyone thinks that everyone who's pro-life is, Catholic or something. I wish that were true. But even if it were, even if every pro-life activist to a man or a woman were Catholic, it still wouldn't make it a Catholic issue. It just might mean that only Catholics are able to see some things that other people can't. It doesn't make it something that's accessible only to Catholics. See, Revelation gives us additional reasons to be good, to live a good life, to live a holy life. But you don't need to be Catholic. You don't need to be a believer to realize that there's a God. In the letter of James, he said, "Oh, you believe there's a God? Oh, good for you. So do the demons, and they tremble." Right? St. Thomas Aquinas thought that human reason is very capable of being shown a lot of truths. You can tell that there is a God simply by reason. There has to be a creator. There has to be an uncaused cause of everything that moves and everything that changes. There has to be something unchanging to have a world of change. And he said, that's God. There's not a lot you can know about God, but you can know that he's one, he's powerful, that he's good, that he's just, etc. You can't tell that he's Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. That's a matter of revelation. You can't tell that there's some kind of final judgment, but you can also tell that there's a lot of just naturally accessible moral truths that all of us can communicate and all of us can share, and we can sort of demonstrate them by reason to those who are stubborn and obstinate. Until sometimes you come across someone whose conscience has been seared. St. Thomas talks about this as someone their minds have been so corrupted that they can no longer see the truth. He says that can happen. And if you don't think 50 years of legalized abortion can do that to people, think again. I was at the Supreme Court for the Webster decision. That was 1989. I forget what state. I think it was Missouri. I was at the Supreme Court again when the 1992 decision came down, and many people were hoping there'd be some kind of change or great disappointment. But even in those days, you had, protesters having their really ugly signs. I remember the one that I found the most painful was abortion on demand and without apology. Some of them tried to be a little more, discreet and for the cameras, and for, people at home watching on TV. They might say something like, choice is good for women, or, trust women. I love that one. Well, who, Lorena Bobbitt? I mean, who? Women can't be criminals. Women can't lie. Women can't do wrong. Trust women. It's like saying trust men. Men can be good. Men can be bad. Women can be good. Women can be bad. I mean, I'm all for equal rights. But even in those days, I mean, many people's consciences had already been seared by that time. I mean, that was 19 years into Roe. But 50 years, that's 2 generations and change. There are a lot of people today who don't know anything of a time when abortion was not available. And there are many women today, daughters of feminists and everything, who think that their whole dignity as women is protected by the availability of abortion. This is how they think, this is how they talk. You're not a real woman, you're not respected as a real woman in your country unless you have the right to have an abortion whenever you want, for whatever reason. You don't need to give an argument. You don't need to give a reason. It's your body, your choice. But of course it does come down to that, doesn't it? Is it a woman's body? First of all, you don't have right to do whatever you want to with your body. I don't. You can commit crimes with your body. if you commit a crime with your body, you will go to jail, and should. That's true of women, it's true of men. But in the case of a baby growing inside a mother, this is a singular case in nature and in the life of all of us. The life of the baby, the body of the baby, is not the life or the body of the mother. A baby is in a particularly precarious state when it depends on the loving care of the mother. There have been women in all ages who have loved their babies. There have been women in all ages who have probably had panic attacks from an unwanted pregnancy. But, you know, a good society is one which will not just outlaw abortion. It has to do with more than just outlawing things. Having the means and the will to promote a culture of life where people surround a woman in a difficult situation and help her with all kinds of material goods as well as spiritual goods. But we live in a world where many people have completely, truly lost any kind of understanding about why this is wrong or that it's wrong, if they ever thought that it was. It seems very clear to, you know, people like us who value life, who pray to God, who believe in Jesus Christ, that, you know, a baby in the womb is very much human, very much a person even. But when some people scoff at us, and worse than scoff, I mean curse and defame us and blaspheme, and some of them even, I mean, I was going to compare it to the most recent Supreme Court decision, Dobbs. I mean, you should, if you haven't gone online and seen some of the footage of protesters there, you would think literally all hell broke loose. These people, some of them are saying things that I didn't think human beings could say. There's a kind of demonic rage and spite against the church. Once again, it's still the church, even though I think the Catholic Church could have gotten this work done a lot earlier if it were unified and, on task. But no, it took the help of many other non-Catholics, and okay, that's fine, but this has gone on way too long. This should have happened a long, long time ago. And the Catholic Church is not nearly as prominent as it should be in this movement and in this, sort of victory that we have now. And yet they somehow, they want to hurt Catholics. They want to deprive us of our churches. They want to bomb and desecrate churches. They want to deface crisis pregnancy centers. They want to deprive women who need help of the help that these places can give them. It's really demonic. And by the way, as for our own churches, I think we shouldn't give them anything. I mean, they don't deserve anything, but let it be a sign to the rest of the world of what these people are and who we are. And after all, didn't the Lord say shortly before his passion, when they were admiring the temple, he said, I tell you, not a stone of it will be left on another. Now, he was referring to the destruction of the temple of Jerusalem. That was to come a couple generations later, but you could say, this whole world is coming to an end. Of course. I remember I turned on the TV one day when Notre Dame was burning. And I just happened to flip on, the news channel, and all of a sudden I'm seeing this, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I thought it was some kind of a joke, or maybe, is this special effects? Are they making a movie or something? But no, Notre Dame was on fire, and I thought it was all gonna go. I was like, man, a gem, an architectural gem, one of Christianity's greatest contributions to art and architecture. And I always wanted to see it. Now I'm not gonna get a chance, but then I checked myself and I said, it's starting. I don't believe that there were, paint just left unattended there. I think there had to be some kind of arson. Call me a conspiracy theorist, but I don't think that was an accident. And as far as our churches go, however beautiful they are, there's a few churches I might actually ask them to burn. I've seen some. Not this one, Father Vader. This is a nice one. But, Jesus told us, we know the world is coming to an end. Let's, if it's going to come quicker, let it come quicker. But let's not be too worried about our physical buildings. Let's realize that in times of persecution, the church grows exponentially. And the church is not just a matter of buildings, the church is a matter of persons that come to adore Jesus Christ as Lord. Okay, here's one more line. Only women get to speak on this issue. Well, now they've really made a mess for themselves with the trans issue, haven't they? You know, who's a woman? What's a woman? Can I be a woman? Who knows? That's never been true. That's never been true for them. They welcome male voices as long as they're pro-abortion voices. And they suppress women's voices if they're pro-life voices. So male or female, doesn't matter to them. They just want pro-abortion voices on this issue, whether they're male or female, and they want the censoring of all pro-life voices, whether they're male or female. This whole idea of, only women get to speak they never meant that. That's, once again, it's a very effective kind of trump card that they use. And pro-lifers are only concerned with the unborn, but not about anyone after birth. We've been talking about that. I'm not going to go into that anymore. We all know it's a lie. Anyone who's ever been in a solidly pro-life parish where they do all kinds of fund drives for women in crisis pregnancies, or there's advertisements about how to help women, and Birthright was operating in Manassas when I was going to high school there. It was there a long time before I ever went to high school, and I used to drive past it every day on my way to Seton. They were doing work then. Everyone knew about it. If a woman was in trouble, she could go, she could get pregnant. Everything from prenatal care to, care long after the birth of the child. As well as often job training and all kinds of stuff. I mean, it didn't just stop with, the prenatal. We just want to make sure that you don't have an abortion. Okay, now you're on your own. I'm going to kick you to the side. Nothing like that. That's a lie. It would also be against the gospel, but it's never been true. People just say it because no one wants to research that, and it makes them feel good to say it. Okay. This is not a matter of pushing Catholic faith on anyone. It does turn out that sometimes the pro-life movement is a wonderful sort of nexus for people to become Catholic. But there's nothing in the pro-life message, or for that matter, a lot of people say, oh, well, the anti-contraception position, that's just Catholic too. No, it's not either. That's another natural law issue. The contraception is wrong is not just some kind of hang-up of Catholics. In fact, all Christians were against the use of the contraception pill up until the Anglican Church sort of opened the way for it, and they said, oh, well, that's only for the married. Yeah, that's going to work. All Christians were opposed to contraception, and not just Christians, but anyone who is accustomed to, regarding marriage as something good and holy and being concerned about, out of wedlock pregnancies and all that kind of thing, could see the potential for sort of breaking the dam wide open with introduction of contraception. And in fact, one of the arguments for contraception would be, well, if you were really against abortion, you'd be more for contraception. You'd be getting people contraception care because they wouldn't get to. What happens is if you give people contraception, you have an exponentially increased number of people all of a sudden having sex outside of marriage. And guess what's going to happen to the abortion rate? It doesn't stay the same. It doesn't go down. It goes through the roof. Contraception abets abortion. Causes abortion. It's all part of the same kind of web of the culture of death. Likewise, the same-sex marriage issue. So many people say, well, that's just the Catholics believe, and Christians believe that marriage is between a man and a woman. That's not what all people believe. Well, it doesn't matter what people believe. It doesn't matter what marriage is. A man can no more marry a man than a man can marry a prime number. You can't just marry something or someone. To be quite frank, you need to have complementary body parts. And you need to be of age. You need the whole existence of marriage, especially for society to recognize it and promote it with laws protecting it, is precisely because of offspring. If sex were simply some kind of recreational activity that people did without offspring, why would the state even need to be involved in marriage or sex at all? It's precisely for the coming about of new citizens and their proper education and upbringing and caring that the state has an interest in marriage at all. So, but it is simply not true to say that marriage is only between a man and a woman for Christians and Catholics and that the state could do. Marriage, once again, marriage is a natural institution. Like the village and the state, marriage is the smallest social unit. The family is the smallest social unit. The family is begotten by a couple. That couple has to be a man and a woman. That's how families come into being. That's how societies are well kept for. This has nothing to do with Christian faith. Once again, it may be mostly Christians and Catholics that see why, but then that just tells us, and G.K. Chesterton told us long ago, that the church has become not anti-reason. That's the great, slander against the church, right? Going back to Galileo and the Inquisition, the church is against reason and science and enlightenment. The church is the only defender, it appears, of enlightenment and reason and science. Okay? So, this is not about the church getting into matters that it has no business getting into. We as citizens have every right to make our voice heard as much as anyone else does. We're not supposed to mute our voices because, well, my gosh, I'm a Catholic and I can't say this sort of thing, There are times I wish I was, it's crazy. It's completely insane. And also, this is perhaps not totally germane to, but there is no such thing as a separation between church and state. There has never been any such thing, except in a letter by Thomas Jefferson that was never mailed. What the Constitution has is a non-establishment clause. And that's only for the federal government. How many people in this country now know? I know kids learning about critical race theory and drag queens today probably are so advanced in civics that I'm sure they all know that almost every one of the 13 colonies had an established church, right? That was not opposed to the Constitution. The Constitution only opposed the federal government establishing a religion. Individual states could do so, and they did. Okay? It is a non-establishment clause. The whole purpose of the First Amendment, the protection of freedom of religion, freedom of the press, is precisely to allow the free, open expression of people's religious beliefs, as well as their religiously motivated moral beliefs, or even their non-religiously motivated moral beliefs, just their moral beliefs, okay? But there's been this great edifice of Supreme Court law, all centered on this phantom separation of church and state. Once again, that phrase, separation of church and state, comes from a letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote to a private letter. It's not even in any of our law, Constitution, Declaration of Independence, nothing. It came from a letter that he wrote and then never even mailed. And yet somehow it has become dogma. American government dogma. Okay. So, it's already late, and I talked longer than I thought I was going to, but, okay. I said enough. Let's take questions for 10 minutes, and then we'll go. Yes, James?
Why is it that so many priests overlook the issues? Are they fear being outcast by the congregation? Maybe there's a myriad of reasons, but...
Why are who afraid priests?
So many priests are unwilling to address this subject like you have and other good priests, the Pope sort of should say...
I'm sure there's many different reasons. Some of them were probably beaten down and, bought off when they were seminarians and young priests. Told that, this is, hot button stuff, just preach the gospel, talk to them about Jesus' love, always let them hear about Jesus' love, which I think is good. I don't think a homily would ever be any good if it didn't talk somehow about Jesus' love. But Jesus was love incarnate, and yet he had some pretty strong things to say. You know,
I mean, Griffin in D.C., he may be one of the worst cases.
who?
Cardinal Griffin.
Gregory.
Okay. I was hoping I didn't have to realize who you meant you were talking about. There are a lot of clerics who don't want to touch this issue. I can't explain to you why all, and I don't know, but if preaching is supposed to be for the salvation of souls, they're absolutely wrong. Because, I mean, no homily should be just about, you know, thundering commands. Everything has to be put in the context of God's plan for us. You know, the beginning of the Catechism is so beautiful. It talks about how God, who is in himself ineffably good and infinitely free, decides to make creatures. You know, God has no need, and yet he's no need of anything or anyone, and yet he creates us. Why? It's a huge question. The Catechism lays that out right at the very beginning in the prologue, and it's, you know, I think all preaching of the church has to express the goodness, the truth, the mercy of God and our salvation. And I think especially at Mass, I think there should always be some kind of tie-in with Eucharist, because that's what you're doing at Mass, is celebrating the Eucharist. But I think a priest is negligent of his duties, seriously negligent, if he fails to talk about some serious issues like this. And especially if he knows the congregation is confused or in error, this has very, very real effects in people's lives and in society, greater society. You know, we're not just supposed to be concerned about our own salvation, but if last Sunday's gospel meant anything, we're supposed to be concerned as much about our neighbor's salvation as our own.
In fact, you say the ones that are kind of lukewarm or not really, if they would hear it, the word like you was speaking tonight, it probably would make it.
Well, maybe. Yes.
So my husband and I were both born after Roe passed.
Mhm.
This is the only world we've lived in, and I guess we're of little faith because neither of us ever thought it was going to change. So when it happened, we were like, we didn't even know how to react.
Yeah.
And now we're not sure, like, well, what do we do now? Because for so long it was always like, this just needs to change. So what are the next steps for us?
Be a good mother. Be a good wife. Be a good citizen. I mean, you know, you don't have to go far away from home to do good. You raise your children well. Talk to your friends. These things just sort of naturally come up. You don't need to become an activist. There are some people who have to dedicate themselves, and they should, you know, to the cause, because it needs some dedicated full-time people. But people who are raising families can't do that. So do what you can in your own little social milieu. And some people are inclined to get on social media and try to mix it up and stuff. I used to encourage people to do that. I don't anymore, because social media is just plain toxic and sometimes dangerous for your mental hygiene, not to mention your moral hygiene. And but there's some people who can still tolerate it and make some change. You know, getting the word out, speaking the truth in clarity and with charity is always necessary, but it's different for different people. I mean, you're under no obligation to, you know. Well, I should also say, I think it's incumbent on people to vote for people that are going to advance the pro-life cause as much as possible. Imagine being a Catholic post-war Germany and having to admit to people, yeah, I voted for Hitler twice. I mean, how could you do that? If there's a pro-life candidate that you really have to hold your nose with and you really can't stand him, I think, you know, abstaining from voting is always an option. I don't think anyone can be forced to vote for someone. Abstain if you must. Do not vote for those monsters. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, so we're the Militant church.
Huh?
We're supposed to be the Militant church.
Yes.
And every single law that is passing, it goes against the Ten Commandments. The blood of the baby that is being killed is making us all guilty because we are, with our taxes,
Yes.
paying for all offense.
I think that's.
So the question, what it means to be a militant church in these conditions? I mean, I hear you where you're saying that, you know, we have to do the best we can, but it feels that the church should give us some guidance.
I'm not saying that's all you should do. I mean, if you want to do more, do more. Be as militant as you want, but I recommend you stay within the law.
No, what it means, I mean, can you give us some?
No, because I think it's different for every person.
But the church, I mean, this is a church teaching, so.
Right. So, I think individual Catholics should try to be as pro-life as they can and advance the cause of life and fight against abortion as much as they can in their
But
own lives.
it's not just you know, the abortion thing, it's
Right.
the transgender
Well,
thing, it's all those things.
right, yeah, all those issues, yeah. You, last one.
Father, one of the states, I can't remember which, is promoting personhood as a predicate for their anti-abortion law.
Mhm.
Do you think that personhood, from a legal standpoint, has a chance, and that's something we should get behind?
I'm all for that. I don't know how much of a chance it has. I'm not as good a reader of the courts as some people are. There's some really good, legal scholars to follow. One of them is Robert P. George of Princeton University. He's fantastic on all kinds of issues, church-state issues, pro-life issue. In other words, Adrian Vermeulen of Harvard University Law School. They're both Catholics and they're both very dynamic people. If you read some of their stuff and even their, tweets, I don't actively engage on Twitter, but I do read a lot of tweets. It's a great way to, sort of follow some issues and get some very up to the moment news. But they both write some really good stuff on Twitter. And they also have books and articles and short blog posts and stuff like that. So there's all kinds of stuff that you can read without getting too immersed in, heavy scholarship. But I don't know the answer to that question. I think, I don't know if the notion of personhood is necessary. I think the notion of humanity should be enough. Because then you're always going to have persons arguing about, what does a person mean? And is every human a person? Can you be a human but not a person? Like before consciousness? But I mean, I don't think you can. I think a human individual is a person, just as an angelic individual is a person. And divine, there are three kinds of persons: the divine, angelic, and human. I think anyone who's a son or daughter of Adam and Eve is a human person. But legally speaking, especially in our legal system, I don't know how effective that would be. So it's 8:30. Sorry, we're gonna have to close it there. Darn. But thank you for coming.